Craft matters. In small ways, like how a coffee is brewed. And in not so small ways, like how your money is cared for. Which is why for 160 years, UBS has elevated banking to a craft. Tailoring unique strategies that combine human expertise with the latest technologies. All happening across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs. With you at the heart of it all. UBS. Advice is our craft.
You're listening to The Globalist, first broadcast on the 23rd of December 2025 on Monocle Radio. The Globalist, in association with UBS. This is The Globalist, broadcasting to you live from Midori House in London for a brisk 30 minutes today. I'm Georgina Godwin. On the show ahead...
The pharmaceutical companies were difficult, but they also love our country. They knew it was unfair.
We'll hear the reaction from Zurich on the pharmaceutical deal affecting Switzerland's drug makers. We'll have a rustle through today's front pages and get a roundup of news from Africa. And then...
This is the only place where I live, and that's in Rovaniemi.
Our Christmas correspondent heads off to Finnish Lapland to meet the red-suited man with the beard at his busiest time of the year. All that right here on The Globalist with me, Georgina Godwin. The White House has now finalised drug pricing agreements with several pharmaceutical groups, including Swiss giants Novartis and Roche. The deals commit companies to lower prices on some medicines in the US, mainly for Medicaid and direct sales, in exchange for a 3-year reprieve from threatened tariffs. Pharmaceuticals are Switzerland's biggest export industry, and drug companies are at the heart of the country's economic relationship with the United States. Well, joining me to discuss this from our Zurich studio is Fabienne Kinzelmann, who's a Swiss business reporter at Bloomberg. Fabienne, many thanks for coming on the show. What exactly has been signed?
Hey, good morning, Georgina. So it has been signed that the drug companies commit to lower prescription drug prices for Americans so that they would be in line with the lowest prices paid by other developed nations. And they agreed to selling them through a special platform named Trump X. And they also agreed to invest more in the US. But we don't know what exactly is in the deals, as they are secret.
And do we know which drugs are affected and how limited the price cuts are?
Yes. So we know that to a certain extent. So we know, for example, that mainly coastly and chronic conditions are affected by the price cuts. So, for example, like type 2 diabetes drugs, drugs for MS, hepatitis, and certain cancers.
Right. Why is tariff relief so valuable that Swiss companies have agreed to this?
Yeah, if it would only be about tariff relief, it's not only about that, actually. So Trump has threatened the drug makers to use like every weapon in his arsenal. So that could also mean, for example, FDA approvals. So like it could be like we don't know what exactly is in the deals, but it could be, for example, that he agreed to like speed up FDA approvals for the companies who made deals and to like lower the approval time for the companies who did not make a deal.
So is US manufacturing investment also part of the agreement?
Yes, it is. That was already quite clear even before Trump threatened the drug makers. It was clear that he would like demand from companies in the US to invest more in the US. So they speed up on that pretty early on.
Right. So in revenue terms, then, how big is the US market for Swiss drug makers?
Yeah, it's very big. I mean, the US market is the most attractive market for drug makers everywhere in the world, and in revenue terms, it's like so Roche and Novartis both make around half of the revenue in the US. And
how's the reaction been to this in Zurich and the rest of Switzerland?
Yeah, it didn't come as a surprise, and the reaction was, as expected, quite mixed. So Roche's CEO, for example, gave an interview where he said like drug prices have to be higher in Switzerland in the future. in order to not be like a reference to lower truck prices in the US. But that's something he's saying for months. And there are like parties and politicians who support that and others who don't.
So I wonder if this is going to then increase pressure on European prices down the line.
Yeah, this is exactly the right question to ask, and that will probably happen, especially because the US introduced a new model in November to actually make that happen. It's kind of like a reference price basket they would use. So they would compare with certain European countries, and among them Switzerland, to to nail down the prices in the US.
So do you think that this ultimately stabilises Swiss-US trade, or does it give perhaps more leverage to Washington?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Yes and no. So what everyone says who's making deals with Trump, a deal with Trump is never finished because he's always looking for the next deal, right? And like as long as like something is not signed, finalized, and even then it could so for example with the tariff deal Switzerland closed in on in November with the US, they now have it was only like an agreement to negotiate a further deal, and then they now got a 3-month deadline to do that.
So I mean, this doesn't end Trump's tariff threats.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you think this problem is going to reoccur down the line?
Yeah, it will for sure be up for further discussion. Also, because not all drugs are in the deal, probably. So the discussion will continue, and other European countries and other developed countries have to step up the game.
So tell us a little bit more about Trump's ongoing tariff threats. What could still happen, and how likely is it?
Well, I don't want to speculate on that. But it's pretty clear that that's something he's laying a focus on, especially with the midterms next year ahead. So he's looking probably for very quick, very fast results. And that's also why he was so eager to close in on the deals with the truck makers before year end, so that the price cuts could kick in before he's actually having to campaign for the midterms next November.
Yeah, because of course this is largely about, his domestic look.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much indeed, Fabienne. Thanks for coming on. That's Fabienne Kinzelmann, a Swiss business reporter at Bloomberg, who was joining us from our Zurich studio. This is The Globalist.
Craft is a matter of perspective, a unique outlook, an obsessive attention to detail. With UBS's Chief Investment Office Houseview, we're focused on identifying the latest investment opportunities and market risks to help you achieve your financial goals, so you get the big picture broken down into thought-provoking insights. Delivered daily and curated by over 200 globally connected, locally active analysts. UBS. Banking is our craft.
Now, here's what else we're keeping an eye on today. Donald Trump says the United States needs Greenland for national security and has appointed Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as a special envoy to pursue the idea. Denmark and Greenland have flatly rejected the move, calling it unacceptable and insisting the island's future belongs solely to Greenlanders. Russia has intensified missile and drone strikes on Ukraine's Odessa region and launched fresh air attacks on Kyiv, despite recent US-led peace talks. Ukrainian officials say the strikes are aimed at cutting off access to the Black Sea, with at least 8 people killed and widespread power outages reported. And France will ask lawmakers to approve a stopgap law to keep the state running into January after talks on the 2026 budget collapsed. With the Eurozone's largest deficit and political gridlock in Parliament, investors are watching closely as the government scrambles to avoid a shutdown. This is The Globalist. Stay tuned. Well, let's continue now with today's newspapers. And joining me in the studio is Chris Chermak, Monocle's senior news editor. Good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning, Georgina. Good to be here.
You're looking surprisingly bright-eyed and happy.
I mean, that's what we have to do, don't we? When we do a show at 7 a.m., we try our best. We look as bright and happy as we can.
Well, and I think in your case, I suspect it's genuine.
I try. It's a holiday week and all of that stuff. I'm going to be flying off to Vienna tonight to spend with my family. So, I mean,
oh, that's lovely.
How can you not be happy?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you who isn't happy. People in Greenland.
They are not happy, no, although they probably don't know what to make of the ongoing threats from Donald Trump. In this case, there's a story from, lots of different websites. I have one here from Politico. President Trump has appointed a special envoy to Greenland, and he's appointed Louisiana's governor, which is also just a bizarre choice, Jeff Landry, who basically, yes, he'll be the special envoy to Greenland, although he himself, in sort of recognizing this role, said it would be voluntary, so he is still going to also be the governor of Louisiana. But he has underlined exactly what Donald Trump wants, which is Greenland. He wants Greenland to become part of the U.S., and Landry said this was an honor to get this position, and he would work to make Greenland a part of the United States. Obviously, you can imagine what kind of reaction that caused within Greenland, who kind of urged his citizens to maintain calm. The Prime Minister of Greenland, Rather Nielsen, saying, "We shape our own future. Greenland is ours and our borders will be respective." The Danish Foreign Minister is outraged, deeply outraged, and says they will summon the U.S. ambassador to Denmark, Ken Howery. As you can imagine, the European Commission also backing Denmark on this. It's one of these things, right? We don't know what the actual impact is, so he's named somebody. It's not even it's a volunteer position. It's not like he's sending troops. But this constant focus on Greenland, saying that it is essential to American national security, has really become a thing this term. And
it started as a sort of joke, didn't it? It was an off-the-cuff remark, and it's just gained so much traction now.
Well, I think it's one of these interesting cases where certain things that maybe in, say, the first term, Donald Trump started things as a joke. Now he believes he can actually do them, or at least he wants to test the boundaries. And I do think Greenland is one of those cases. He seems to really have become convinced of this, talking about in his own Truth Social about how essential Greenland is to American national security. So he seems to believe this now. He is fixated on it. And I think it's part of this sort of element of Donald Trump in his second term that he can really do whatever he wants.
Including naming almost everything after himself. So we had the Kennedy Center the other day, which is now the Trump Kennedy Center.
It's nice of him to keep Kennedy's name on it, though, wasn't it? It's the Trump Kennedy, not just the Trump Center.
But the whole row about that only Congress can change that name.
Of course, exactly. But he has named himself also the director of the Kennedy Center. So that is an example of just how far he will go. And there's another example today from the Washington Post and so many others that he has announced the naming of a new Navy battleship class, the Trump class. And so, yes, this is the next step, if you will, in the naming. And it also goes similar to the Kennedy Center. It's not just about the fact that he is naming a Trump class of warships. He wants 2 new warships to start to be built. But it's also the fact that he says he will be involved in the design of these warships, and he wants to go back to this grand old age of World War II battle class warships. And this is what's interesting as well about so much of what Donald Trump does. When you look behind the scenes, when you speak to people in military circles, including these articles, they say, we don't really want this kind of massive warship that he is planning to build. The Navy has been going for smaller, more nimble. You look at the war in Ukraine, it's all about drones, it's about, things like that. But Donald Trump wants a show of force. This is what he has been about. And so this, aside from the fact that he wants it named for himself, and it would be the first time a sitting president gets a named ship. You have lots of former presidents who have named ship. The Gerald R. Ford is currently in Venezuela, and I know you talked about that on yesterday's show. So this is something that happens, but of course the fact that it's his name while he is present, and he wants to be so involved in this show of force to China, whether it actually is something the Navy wants or not.
He wants 25 of these ships eventually. The Naval Secretary says this is just one piece of the President's Golden Fleet that we're going to build.
The Golden Fleet, exactly. And there's a lot of, when you read in this article as well from sort of military experts, there are a lot of doubts about whether these will even be able to be built. Again, also Congress has to be involved, similar to, as you said, with the Kennedy Center. So there are a lot of questions around this. But yes, he wants 2 for now, 25 going forward for his Golden Fleet.
But I mean, we're seeing this provoke real divisions within the MAGA movement because, of course, he came to power on America First and the fact that he was going to stop all kind of foreign intervention. And in fact, now everybody's some people are extremely upset that he is focusing on foreign policy.
Very good point. You've seen a lot of divides over the last few days, even at conferences of MAGA and the conservative movement, including Charlie Kirk's former movement. You're seeing a split here. There is clearly Donald Trump has a focus on foreign policy, also, of course, wanting to end wars, strikes in Venezuela, strikes in Syria, for that matter, as well over the weekend. And yes, this is testing his loyalty with the MAGA right, who, of course, was actually more isolationist. And so, yes, he hasn't put boots on the ground anywhere, which is a key element, I think, to sort of divide when you look at his perspective on this. He strikes from afar, but he doesn't necessarily put boots on the ground, although that, of course, could change with Venezuela as well.
Absolutely. Let's turn our glance now to Europe and Germany's AfD party, because this far-right group has been accused of gathering information for the Kremlin.
Yeah, I found this a really fascinating story. It actually begins back in November. Spiegel in Germany revealed this sort of big report. They went into parliamentary inquiries. And so it's something that sounds very boring on its face. It's basically about what, like any country, parliamentarians can inquire for information from ministers. In the US, you have, say, Freedom Information Acts for journalists, things like that. But what they found was that the Alternative for Germany has asked for about 7,000 security-relevant questions from ministries since 2020. And Politico has the story as well. It's caused a lot of consternation because there is taking all of these together, what many who oppose the AfD and security groups in Germany believe that this paints a picture of what Germany is doing to support Ukraine. And that's why this is so critical. It's asking about, say, in Thuringia, one member, Ringo Mühlmann, has asked what information does the state government have about the extent of military transit transports through Thuringia since 2022. So these are detailed questions about military transports, about drones, about humanitarian aid passing through eastern Germany on its way to Ukraine, which has led many in Germany, including security experts, security politicians of other parties, to say this might be something that is helping Russia, because taken alone, one bit of information about a military transport doesn't paint much of a picture, but you put it all together and it suggests that whatever has to be released by the ministries might help Russia understand what is going to Ukraine from Germany.
Yeah, a Trojan horse, if you like.
Exactly, and that's the worry. Of course, the AfD has denied it. They say these are valid questions. They're just trying to paint a picture of what's happening in their states, and they deserve to know military movements in the states where they have representation. But it is causing a lot of questions from opposition groups.
Let's go to Australia now, because there is bitter partisanship now after this awful Hanukkah attack at Bondi Beach.
Yeah, I just found this a really interesting story because it was from the New York Times, and it kind of related this to the United States, because I think most of the time when you have an attack as horrific as this, a country will come together. And when it came to the Bondi Beach attack in Sydney, that is something that initially started out. There was a bipartisan response. Full and unconditional support was offered by the conservative opposition. But that has now gone over a week later. You're seeing a lot of divisions. It frankly started also with Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel accusing Anthony Albanese, of the Prime Minister of Australia, of this being linked to his declaration of a Palestinian state or acceptance of a Palestinian state. What you've seen within Australia is the conservative opposition also jumping on this idea that Albanese has not done enough to root out anti-Semitism in Australia. Even things like gun laws, which are now being tightened. That is the news of the last 24 hours or so from Australia. Opposition is accusing Albanese of using that to distract from his failure to root out anti-Semitism. He was not able to go to a funeral for Bondi Beach over the weekend because he feared the reaction that he would get. So this is really testing Anthony Albanese at a time where you would expect a country to come together and find some sort of common solutions. The New York Times, interestingly, sort of links this to the U.S. and the fact that, abroad we tend to have a bit more unity. In the U.S., when there's a shooting, very sadly, this is quite commonplace.
And the awful footage of Albanese being booed.
Exactly, being booed when he did attend a sort of memorial at Bondi Beach as well. So you're just really seeing a fracturing of Australian society around this.
Now, there's one song that every station plays at Christmas time. It's Driving Home for Christmas.
It is.
And sadly, the artist behind that has died at the age of 74.
We did want to give an ode to Chris Rea. He's a British musician. And yes, I saw the story. I mean, obviously it's been around, but I picked out this story from the BBC about it because it linked this song with his own interests and inspirations. The car enthusiast whose love of driving inspired his song. So Driving Home for Christmas, which is such a staple around Christmas time, was written apparently in 1978 after he lost a record deal and his record label or former record label wouldn't even buy him a ticket to get home from London to Middlesbrough, so his wife had to come pick him up. And while he was sitting in traffic on the way back to Middlesbrough, he started sort of humming this tune as they were stuck and watching the other cars driving home for Christmas.
Oh, and there's a lovely story about how during his driving test, he took it in one of his dad's ice cream vans. He had to do an emergency stop. The examiner fell off the box he was sitting on and cut his leg. And he said, I had to take him to the hospital, but he still passed.
That was a very nice driving test guy, isn't it? I mean, to do that. But yes, he apparently was going to be an ice cream magnate, if you will, until he became a musician instead. This was what his father's hopes were for him. And that's why he actually passed his driving test in an ice cream van.
And then went on to have this huge, huge hit. He will be sorely missed at a very young age to go. Chris, thank you very much indeed.
Happy holidays.
That's Chris Chermak there. You're listening to The Globalist on Monocle Radio.
IQ, EQ, and AI. 3 components key to the craft of innovation at UBS. Because to stay ahead in a rapidly evolving age, you need a partner with decades of experience, endless passion for the work, and a finger on the pulse of leading technologies, bridging human expertise with artificial intelligence, all to elevate you. UBS. Banking is our craft.
You're back with The Globalist on Monocle Radio, and it's time for a roundup of news from Africa. And for that, I'm joined by Navina Couture, Monocle's Nairobi correspondent. Good morning to you, Navina.
Good morning, Georgina.
Is it all Christmassy there?
Well, it's Christmassy in, Kenyan terms. It's very sunny. We have beautiful weather here. Unlike in Europe, I think it's quite cold there. So, it's a different type of Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely. It always struck me when I had Christmas in Zimbabwe how incongruous it was to have, pictures of snow and robins and other things never found there.
Yeah.
Right, let's dive straight into the papers because big story here about the US recalling its envoys from 29 countries. Those are mostly African countries. What's behind this?
Yes, exactly. The union representing US diplomats is saying it's deeply concerned by this process. They are concerned that it politicizes the Foreign Service even further. I think it's interesting that this reshuffle has not been publicly announced and has rather been leaked by State Department employees who've been compiling lists of those who have received a recall order. From what we understand, about 15 diplomats will be recalled just from the African continent, including from Niger, Uganda, Senegal, Somalia, Cote d'Ivoire, Mauritius, Nigeria, Gabon, Congo, Burundi, Cameroon, and Rwanda. And the concern, I think, really is that it sort of pushes diplomats towards a more kind of, America first, trade and business focused dealing. And we're getting a lot of criticism from inside the State Department about this decision.
So does that mean that the embassies themselves will close down completely or just key personnel are being moved out?
No, the embassies, from what we understand, will not be closed down, but the ambassadors or the special envoys will be recalled. I know it is fairly usual for US governments to send people who have donated to the campaign, people who are close to the president abroad, but it is apparently unusual, this is according to the union, to recall people in the middle of the service. And that's, I think, the main concern that people have, that ambassadors who've served for a year or 2 years are now being recalled.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to another story about health now, because there's a $2.5 billion health cooperation agreement between Washington and Nairobi. But people are not happy about this. Why?
No, people are not happy about this. Let's remember the year on the continent started with massive cuts by the US government to its USAID budget. Staff was relocated, programs were closed. Now, Kenya is actually the first country to have signed this $2.5 billion health cooperation with the government in Washington. But the Kenyan court has stopped this. There were two separate challenges to this agreement, one by a local senator and one by a consumer federation lobby group. And what the court said is that this agreement provides or facilitates a transfer and sharing of medical and sensitive personal health data, even after any agreement has been terminated. So this is the key sticking point now as to whether this deal can go ahead and whether a Kenyan court will allow it, even if they amend the healthcare, even if they amend the deal.
So it's all about data privacy.
Yes, it's very much about data privacy and the question whether the US government should gain really extensive access to Kenyan health management systems and electronic medical records. And there are, I think, real concerns here about data protection and whether the US government will ever be obliged to conform with local laws.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on now to this very disturbing story about some South Africans who were really duped into fighting for Russia.
Yes, I have to say it is quite a story. From what we understand, on the 8th of July of this year, a group of at least 17 young men from South Africa left Johannesburg on a flight to Russia. They had been offered training as bodyguards for former President Jacob Zuma's party. But then very soon it became clear that the training education they were promised was never going to be. And instead, they had to sign contracts in Russian language that they say they did not understand. And they've been sent to the front lines in Russia. From what we understand, they're now stuck, and the South African government has been saying in November it's trying to negotiate that these citizens who are trapped in the Donbas region of Ukraine, can return. This is obviously, as you know, proving to be very, very difficult. And I think the other thing that is really railing South Africans and is causing a lot of debate is the fact that it now seems that one of the daughters of Jacob Zuma, the former president of South Africa, has been involved in the recruitment. There's now a police investigation underway to see what kind of role she played. And this criminal complaint was filed by another of Jacob Zuma's sisters, by her older half-sister.
Oh, and the allegation is, of course, human trafficking, which is extremely serious.
Yes, it is extremely serious. And this daughter had to resign from her position in parliament. She was representing her father's party there. But it is thought that there might be even more people stuck there. And the South African government is saying it's very difficult to negotiate these releases because they have to negotiate with both of these governments who are at war with each other.
Let's end with a feel-good story, shall we? And this is about K-pop and African music, particularly South African music, teaming up together.
Yes, the Korean entertainment company HYBE is making a big push into Africa. It's starting with a big star in South Africa called Tyler. She has won the Grammys, but it's all part of a big expansion of HYBE towards Africa, but also towards other continents. Tyler is the first local signing in Africa, and the company is hoping to push into a market where just if we just look at the streaming industry, it is worth $500 million. It was worth $500 million in 2025. So I think the combination of Afrobeats being a big success, the Grammy Awards having now its own African music performance category, means that big companies and big, entertainment companies like Hype, we've reported this in the past about companies like Netflix, are now pushing into the African market.
Navina, thank you very much indeed. That's Navina Kaur in Nairobi. You're listening to The Globalist on Monocle Radio. Finnish Lapland has built a global tourism industry around one very familiar figure, Santa Claus. Our correspondent, Petri Burtsoff, travelled to Rovaniemi, a town that's made a convincing case for being Santa's official home. He went underground, met a few elves, and, most importantly, sat down with the man himself to ask some pressing questions. Petri brings us this report.
The temperature has dropped far below zero, and the ground is covered in a thick layer of powdery snow. Just outside the center of Rovaniemi, in Finnish Lapland, perched on a forested hill, a set of doors leads deep underground into Santa's grotto. This is Santa Park, a subterranean attraction where visitors wander through tunnels lined with workshops, bakeries, and classrooms, all staffed by Santa's elves. They train year-round in toy making, gingerbread baking, and elf etiquette, while choirs rehearse Christmas songs for December's peak season. Although Santa is not the only reason tourism in Lapland is booming, there are the northern lights, reliable snow for almost half the year, and an abundance of winter activities. It's clear that the region has branded itself as Santa's homeland in a remarkably convincing way. But rather than rely on marketing slogans, I went straight to the source.
First of all, Santa, thank you for welcoming me here. Maybe we can start with, if you can tell our listeners about this place where we are. Is this your home?
Yes, this is my city home in Rovaniemi. And of course I have even my real home in the very, very deep forest, but that's a top secret. So here is the city home, and here I will even welcome all the visitors that come here to see me in Rovaniemi.
And now to all the people around the world who are listening to this radio show, what do they need to do to meet the real Finnish Santa?
Oh, that's very easy. They can take a hike with my sledge and the Rudolph bus. Perhaps it's easier to come by. They can come by an aeroplane here or by train from Helsinki. I have a own train. It's called Santa's Express, and it goes straightly from Helsinki here to Rovaniemi.
Now that I had a first-hand source at my disposal, I asked Santa to settle a long-running geographical dispute.
There has been some dispute about where Santa lives, because some people believe that he lives on the North Pole, and I have even heard some people say in Sweden. Mostly they think that he lives in Sweden, but can you just set the record straight here?
Yeah, I will tell you. This is the only place where I live, and that's in Rovaniemi. But I understand that they perhaps think that this is so long far away in the north, so it's very close to the North Pole. But Rovaniemi is the right name of the place where I live. So I really understand that people will be a little bit confused, but it's very far north, but the place is Rovaniemi. So here they can come and see me from the whole world, and I have daily visitors from the whole world, from more than 25-30 countries. For example, today it has been from Singapore, from Ukraine, from Great Britain, from the States, from Australia, or from Sweden.
Children around the world write letters to Santa, but meeting him in person comes with its own set of expectations.
Oh, at first they ask if they are on the very nice list. And then, of course, they ask for all kind of wishes, you know. Sometimes they ask for a lot of good health. They ask for all kind of toys. Someone asked me for a Lamborghini. And then one guy asked me one day, I know that my dad will prefer to have a great big Aston Martin Formula One car, but it's perhaps so heavy and big to take in the sledge, so I offered them a smaller one.
Okay. So you cannot always get what you wish for. You have to be very, very nice that year.
You understand, they ask for some very technical stuff. I'm not so sure that my elf can make any iPads and iPhones and something like that. It sounds so very difficult, these human magic machines.
And for those inspired to pay Santa a visit in Lapland, be warned, it may come with a long-term commitment.
At the same time, when they're visiting me, they have to make the elf school here. I have a very good school. Unfortunately, so it takes a little bit time, about 99 years, but it's a very, very good school. So they normally make the elf school before they're flying back home. And if they're making a very good job in the elf school, so perhaps they can stay here and become an elf.
It's only a few days until Santa departs on his annual journey to deliver presents to children around the world. After what will undoubtedly be a long day of singing, dancing and navigating air traffic control with flying reindeer, what does Santa do when the last present is delivered?
Oh, I tell you what. Then I sit down at the table and then I have a very big plate of Christmas porridge, a very big one made by Miss Claus. And then after that I will have a short nap for about 2, 3, 4 hours. And then again I have a very big plate of Christmas porridge.
Finally, Santa had a message for Monocle Radio listeners around the world.
Now that you have the attention of all the Monocle Radio listeners all around the world, what do the listeners need to do to make sure that Santa delivers nice presents for them this year?
They have to be very nice and very kind to each other at first. That's very nice. And then and be very helpful to each other. That's the best deal for to have some nice Christmas gifts. And of course, I always even ask for some favors from the people that come here to see me, to keep the chimney clean and no fire in the fireplace, and because it's so healthy for my stomach, so I really would like to have some nice minced pies and chocolate cookies. That's perfect for me as well. And no Santa traps in the garden. Merry Christmas and all the best to all of you in the whole world. Merry Christmas.
For Monocle Radio in Santa's home in Lapland, I'm Petri Burtsov.
Many thanks there to Petri, and you can hear part 2 of his report from Santa's hometown on the briefing at midday today. And that's all for this edition of The Globalist. Thanks to our producers, Hassan Anderson, Chris Chermak and Desiree Blandley. Our studio manager was Steph Chungu, with editing assistance from Mariella Bevan. And there's more music on the way, and the briefing will be live at midday. The Globalist will return at the same time tomorrow with a special look at the year 2025 in geopolitics. I'm Georgina Godwin. Goodbye and thanks for listening. And here to play us out, the late Chris Rea.
Take a look at the driver next to me. He's just the same. He's driving home, driving home, driving home for Christmas.
With UBS, you have a truly global partner, incorporating new technologies, innovative approaches, and unexpected opportunities, leading you to insights that help answer the questions that matter, delivered with passion, care, and unmatched expertise. Because it's about rising with the dawn each day, knowing that we can do even better. That's what banking is to us. Not just work, but a craft. UBS. Advice is our craft.